So first of all, I'm very grateful for the service, and I hope we'll give something to you in your missions, wherever you are. And here's a small presentation of time history. We really started in 2016, 15 actually, with 16 we made this 8-year plan. And the plan was simple. How can we prescribe agriculture when it's so different in the different biomes? Africa has one biome, India has one biome, England has one. So how are we going to make a foundational course when agriculture is so particular to one place? So my first initiative was basically to visit everybody and see what's happening on the ground. Not only to understand the systems, but to understand the people. What are you doing? What are your challenges? What do you need? And what I discovered was most farmers, I don't know if you had the experience, felt that the leadership didn't care so much about our mission. It's not so important. We have more important business to do, and the leaders haven't come here very much to listen to us. So basically the visit was to tell everyone, look, I'm coming as a GBC representative to tell you that this is important for the leadership. I am trying to be that bridge, and that allowed us to meet people, put some systems in place, and run conferences. Why conferences? Because the conferences, everybody comes together, and it's a cheap means to unite people, because everybody gets a little bit, and then the conference happens. Plus, you bring experts that you're already cultivating locally, so your expert network comes in. And finally, the conference starts to create a culture of talking about that. So, since we had limited funds, this was the system we did to achieve cycle number 2, which was to put up a global team. We needed a global team, but how do you do that? It has to be based on relationships. And this is top part of today's class. And that relationship really starts with knowing people, spending time together, understanding the challenges that you locally are facing there. Then you can implement something a little more successful. And that global team had the goal of establishing education. So pandemic kind of told us it has to be online. And then the 2 topics is regenerative agriculture and ethical dairy. So these 2 topics are topics which for us who are on the field are very important. Okay, and we're going to explore a little bit why this is important for Srila Prabhupada and for us in the world. My father and his grandfather and his great-grandfather were all farmers. They took care of cows. My great-grandfather used to travel 800 kilometers to get better cows for his herd to improve their quality. And at that time, there were already Indian breeds in Brazil, which came from a village in Gujarat and became very, very well developed in Brazil. You're all familiar with the breeds of Indian cows in Brazil. So he had some of those cows. And my father, this is a very dry region, was feeding cactus to the cows, those Mexican cactus, which they make sandwiches in Mexico. And he was a smart guy. So he trained the bulls, so the bulls would go alone. He would jump off the bullock cart, go to the pantry, get some cheese, jump back in the bullock cart, and Haribo, go back to cut his food for the cows. So that was his seva. He did not want to leave the farm, but his grandmother said, this is an intelligent guy, you study a little bit, and it worked. He ended up in Cambridge in the United Kingdom as a PhD researcher, and he came to India, Hyderabad, 1981. So I went to a village in India in 1981. Now, the image which is imprinted on my mind to the day, I'm sure many of you have that image, was of complete peace. One family was doing the cotton, another family was hanging the bells so the birds didn't eat the crops. Another family was harvesting, another was threading, another was painting, another was making the cloth, and another was selling. In the middle was a temple. I can't recall, I was too young, I was 12, I didn't pay attention which deities were there, but there was a temple. everybody had time. That image still lies on my head. And I believe Prabhupada had some similar images when he talks about this. Okay, so let's go now. Why this is important today? I brought you a film, a little film from the United Nations. What's happening today that makes this especially relevant? At this point, 70% of the waste comes in towns, and 80% of the global energy comes in towns. So Prabhupada was very clear that this system will have a problem very soon. Actually, it's happening. South Africa is in a big crisis as we speak. The financial situation is very weak. Russia and Ukraine is a very difficult situation. So many countries are going through very acute crisis as we speak. So Prabhupada understood, and he was proposing something beyond. We would like to explore a little bit. Let's open. Yes. When we talk about this, usually we blame the Industrial Revolution, and we say the purpose of the Industrial Revolution was to produce more, to increase production. But that's not the real purpose of the Industrial Revolution. Industrial Revolution was supposed to redefine humans. That was their inner purpose. And how did that happen? Before you click there, go back. One, just click here and it will go back with your two fingers. And you got it? No. Oh, yes, you got it. We want to introduce the principle of transhumanism. That's an old principle. Descartes was using, Dante was using. The idea that we can go beyond with technology without interdepending to other sources of power. We can do it on our own. And now we are going to a digital transhumanism era. And okay, now let's go in. Right? And basically, the idea is that technology demonstrated through GDP, as we heard today in the plenary, is going to sort our problems. But that's not really helping. We just saw the report from FAO. They are not solving our problem. It's just obvious that that model has not worked. If we look at agriculture, see, the purpose of which is to overcome the limits of human nature. So, this transhumanism idea, this digital idea, is trying to say, look, you really don't depend on anything. Ourselves, we can overcome the problems of nature. And immediately Prabhupada has said, that's a foolish idea. And we're going to try to explore a little bit about that. So if we go to agriculture, which is our region, our topic of today, this guy Fritz, he had an idea. We have so much war material, urea and other chemicals, and we're using in war. Why not use it in agriculture? So agriculture today means war. Look at the similarity of the machinery. We have to kill everything. Everything has to be uniform. So that's the concept. And that was all based on this concept, that we can surpass nature. Soil is not important. We add all the chemicals, it will make it. Turns out the global warming, pollution situation is becoming very critical. And then there is thinking a lot about this. So that's one of the consequences of this paradigm. Let's go to the next one. The other thing is biotechnology. We said the same principle, say, okay, we can inject pieces of genes in different parts of plants, animals, and humans, and we can change everything. So when you go into artificial intelligence, it's even more scary. Like Google is planning to launch an app, you just say, Google, tell me about war. And he produces a text according to the tone, what you need. And artificial intelligence is going very far and wide. Okay? So this is just to present what is happening and why is this thought process. Okay, let's go back. No, not. Yes, okay, sorry. Yes, that's good. Sorry. You can get it? It's got lost. You see, we usually speak very badly about technology in our seminars. So technology usually fights back and says, you need me sometimes. This is from a Brazilian friend presentation, just presenting to the 4 stages of revolution. The first one was really the mechanization one, which you talked about, called Industrial Revolution. Then you had the exploration of resources, going to the nuclear exploration of energy. And now we are really in the virtual point where the whole system is on information and data. Yeah? Let's go back. Or let's go out of this. No. Let's go here too. Now, before we go on, I want to present another concept of transcendentalism, which is analog transhumanism. That's our line. And analog transhumanism is based on the idea that we are interdependent. We depend on high authority to transcend. We depend on nature to exist. We depend on other sources other than my own minute intelligence to go. So we're going to explore this as our rational thought. Okay, let's go there. Here we have a beautiful scene of interdependence. I've seen so many pictures of His Holiness Radhanath Swami where he expresses the love he has for cows, for nature, for sages. And we're really looking at the idea that work not done, 3.9 Bhagavad Gita, for the pleasure of the Supreme creates, what does it create? Bondage. And that's what we saw in the other thought. So much bondage and reactions and complications, right? Now, if we look at the nature of sacrifice, which is the basis of work, Prabhupada is saying the verse, let's go here to see, this is a beautiful scene where the cows are being worshipped. And sometimes you say, is this purely ritualistic? Is this purely religious? Is there an inner biological principle behind that? Yes or no? Yes? Do you know what it is? Let's have a look together. Let's click here, Prabhu. Well, Prabhupada said cow protection means feeding the Brahminical culture, which leads towards God consciousness. And thus, perfection of human civilization is achieved. A sutra. Prabhupada is saying, look, cow protection means feeding the Brahminical culture. How does that happen? How does do cows feed the Brahminical culture? Let's go to ghee. Well, the Mahabharata says, without ghee, no sacrifice can be called really a sacrifice. So that's one aspect. And we see how Prabhupada introduced this process of having ghee in his community from the very beginning. He was telling, you can produce ghee and trade for books. He was inspiring devotees to have cows and produce more and more because he wanted ghee. Why did he want ghee? Sacrifice, and people used to eating meat. So, Her Grace Malati Devi was with us, and she was saying, Prabhupada told her his strategy was to transfer the taste for the meat for the taste of the ghee. So people gradually would say, hey, this is better. And if you ever have eaten a Mahaprasad of ghee from your deities, like a samosa fried in ghee, it's a unique experience, right? There you go. We could go on making seminars in Ayurveda about the benefits of ghee in our lives. Right? Ayurveda have a lot. Let's go out of this. So definitely there's a connection between ghee and sacrifice. That's one aspect. You ready to move on to the next one? Opposite. Yes. Oh, I don't know where we went. Let's see. We went all the way to India. Okay, no problem. I'll show you this slide. It's a little ahead of time, but this is the survey we made. We traveled all the places, and we found out how many cows we have, how many acres we have. And in the world, we have about 1,000 cows, bulls, and calves. That's in our website. You can just with one click see them. And the world of ISKCON has 10,500 acres. In India, at this point in time, with only 36 projects registered out of 68, we have 4,130 cows, bulls, and calves, and we have 737 acres. Very minimal land. This is important because I'm going to get to you just a sec. This will define what farming system should we use for India. What should be understand is a farming system. Yes, Prabhu, you have a question? This is only ISKCON. The first survey was only the ISKCON properties. The next survey for the next 4 years, all ISKCON devotees. We're going to open up. Because he's a farmer in France, he's got some land, which is not in this figure. Okay, can we go out of this? Yes. Let's go to Dharma. Let's go back to Dharma. And the other aspect of Dharma is that Bhagavatam 1:17.3, you cannot take Dharma from milk. The religious principles are there. And you can derive them. So here we see a picture, what we talked about. The milk is bathed in the deities and is also feeding the Brahmans, which develops his finer tissues of the brains to understand God consciousness. There you are. The connection between the cows, Brahminical culture, and civilization. Let's go another one. Let's go out of that. Yes. And let's go to the soil, which is our part. Okay, this is Albert Howard. He was a British person. And as a British person, he had a very good quality. And do you know what that quality was? He was British and he was humble. A rare combination. To have the two together is a very nice combination. If you ever met a humble British person, he's the nicest person of the universe. And I've met a few. And he was one of them. He was one of them. And what he did, he came to India to implement a technical farming. The British Empire was producing tractors in Canada, America. The Massey Ferguson sons, they want to bring it here. And he wanted to teach the Indian people how to do real farming, because primitive people didn't know anything about that. Now when he came to India and he says, I'm going to produce this much food, the people here said, but we're producing double of what you're proposing. So what's the point of your teaching? So because he was humble, he said, wait a moment, I cannot teach this. I have to learn. So he studied the systems, and he became the father of organic agriculture in the West. He took it to England, and then one lady took it to France, the biologique agriculture, and then to America, the Rododale Institute, and then all these different movements came, and from Germany, Steiner came with the biodynamic, and you have the history of the West organic farming, learning from India. So India was doing it, and they just understood how India was doing, and they processed it and presented, look, we have to include, who do we have to include? The cows. Now here's the connection between what he saw and what India was doing. The relationship between biomass, between cow dung, and between soil. And with that, he improved the results tremendously. There are other aspects which we're going to discuss a little bit, but Howard visits the West now and brings the concept we can live with nature, interdependence with the animals. Let's move on, next one. So we explored sacrifice, the aspect of the cows and sacrifice. But here comes the nature aspect. Okay? Click on nature. Anybody who has a little property, a house, has experienced this. You leave your house for a few months and the grass starts coming through the concrete. Anybody had that experience? If you leave it long enough, this is a temple, Jain temple, Tipu Sultan conquered. It destroys the temple. The trees grow through it. It's just completely destroyed. Nature is going in a certain path. But I want to show you what principle is that. That's very important. Let's go to that. Yes. Again, one more. Let's come here to the natural law. Now, Prabhupada speaks about the natural law. And let's have a look at the natural law. Here's the natural law. The natural law means there's some grass. It's very important. Pay attention to this. This is a sense of what Prabhupada is talking about. The grass is in the placenta stage. The amount of life here is very minimal. The community down the grass, the roots is short, little life here. The soil is not so strong. If you leave it a little more, let's say a few months or 1 year, bushes come out. That's the colonization point. Other bushes are saying, look, we need to create life, consolidated life here. So succession is taking place. Every plant knows who should come there. One plant is coming to the other, and then they're succeeding. That's succession. 5 years, a small forest is there. If you go to your backyard, it's a forest. Isn't it? You go out and you forget, and it's a rainy season, it's taken over. Because other species have come over, up and down. This is accumulation point. And then finally, you come to the forest. The forest means it's the top part. It's the maximum life you can have, because there's a maximum life underneath. So you've gone from placenta to climax. Simple to complex. Let's repeat this with me. How does nature work? Once again, from simple to, that's how nature works. How do we work? We cut the forest to produce grass. Isn't it? Rice is a grass, wheat is a grass, fodder for the cows is a grass. So we are working against the nature. Therefore, we have to put so much ingredients to compensate. But if we learn how to work with the nature, then it's easier. So the first point of today's presentation is to show that our efforts should point towards working with nature, integrating the cows in that farming system. Okay? Very good. So let's come here to energy and life. Okay, if you have a natural system, it uses 3% of its energy to generate 10 to 15% surplus. If you have a technological system, you have to burn 70 to 75% of fuel to generate the same 10% of surplus. What does that mean? This system is gaining energy naturally. This system is losing energy naturally. This is entropic. It's taking from you. This is syntropic. It's giving you. Okay? So here, you go to a farm, the farmer has 300 pumpkins. What does he say to you? Take one. Please, take two. I need my family. Oh, take 10. Once we were in a padayatra in Brazil, it was very dry, and one of the preachers said, you know, when you chant Hare Krishna, it rains? And the whole village, which was all Christians, said, really? So let's chant Hare Krishna. And they all chanted in the hall. The whole, with the bull, they were there, and they all stopped and chanted. And believe it or not, it rained. Now, you can imagine the transformation in this village. Everybody saying, it's kind of a miracle. So what did they do? Everybody went home and brought about 10 pumpkins for them and gave it, and they cooked the khichdi, and then they offered and they gave it out. Now, if it was in a city, I'm not sure someone would go to their pocket and say, look, I got extra dollars. Here, have it. Because it's entropic. It's taking your energy from you. And that's the fear. It's going to finish. My money is going to finish. My energy is going to finish. My food is going to finish. That's what we saw in the video. So we need to be more syntropic in ISKCON. We need to be generating natural abundance instead of entropic abundance. Because then we have to go around and beg for donations all the time, because it's always lacking. Prabhupada wanted us to be independent from outside help. Therefore, we need systems. Let's go back to energy life. We need systems which are generating abundance. Otherwise, your farming system will be sucking energy from you, not giving energy to you. We need to get energy, not lose energy. Okay? And for many years, we did not understand this element. Therefore, we were thinking farming is difficult because we're not fully equipped. But now we're getting much more equipped in our institution. So just to finalize, this is what we call the GPD, uneconomic development. You produce a tomato and you say it's costing 5 rupees. But the real cost of that tomato is 50 rupees. Ecological pollution, destruction of soil structures. destruction of village systems because you become a mega producer. When you try to replace that, the cost of that tomato is 50, but you're selling for 5. How come? It's uneconomical. Therefore, it won't work. Prabhupada says that straight front. But if you have a living soil, it works. Next one, let's go to now very quickly. What is the time? Can anybody guide me? Okay, community. If you go to community, now this is really important. Okay? If we have a community, it works because everybody's working together. Now, we see the forest upside from the ground up. You don't see what's happening down. What does that mean? It means that each of these plants only use 50% of their sugar coming from photosynthesis for themselves. The rest is given to the rhizosphere, the area of the roots where the sugars are spread out, and all the bacteria, fungi, nematodes, all this biological community is producing amazing things. What do? Let's ask some of you, why bacteria and microbiological world is important? Anybody? They now good shot. That's good. How do they do that? That's how they work. They cooperate together. That's right. How do they do it? Exactly. What you have described is there's a liquid solution in the soil, and they make those ingredients in the soil available for the plants. So there's a symbiosis between the root, the bacteria, and the nutrients. And those levels need to be adjusted in order for the plant to absorb the right nutrients to come up. Now, if you stack here phosphorus and nitrogen, you inhibit zinc, you inhibit calcium. And then your food here will create diseases because it's lacking in zinc, it's lacking molybdenum, it's lacking copper. And that's why you eat a lot, but you don't get nutrition, because there's a nutrients depletion in the fruits, because this is messed up. So once you get this right, this is automatically right. So that's the second point of today's presentation. There's a living community under the soil which we need to look after and able to look after us. We have not seen this like a foundation of a building. We don't see what's below the TOVP, we just see the TOVP. But below the TOVP is a huge foundation which is holding the TOVP. And that's what this is. And even beyond that, the bigger foundation of TOVP will be the community around TOVP, supporting the activities in TOVP. So here, in this community, it's said that one plant will communicate to the root system what this plant is needing, and some bacteria migrate to digest what this plant requires in a real community spirit. Now, every time we destroy this community to plant a new crop, they restart. Does it work? Yes, but it takes restart. They produce a whole system, air, water, perfect system. You put a tractor again. Then you put a tractor again. So we have to be clever and understand systems which help us to work with nature. I'm not here saying we should just leave the forest. They have systems, and we're going to look at them. Let's go there. Farming system which respond to them. Now see, from the principle to the application. Well, this is our friend Romulo. He's in Brasilia. He's doing syntropic farming. Chop and drop. That's the rule. Chop and drop. Chop and drop. Why? When you chop, the biomass falls. It becomes food for the bacteria. You're feeding the roots. The fruits are strong. Disease is not a problem. Everybody lives peacefully. Okay? So chop and drop is a good technique to think about. In the middle of it, you could have grasses, and the cows could roam in the middle. So you could have a grazing silvopastoral system. You could have grains in the middle. You could have vegetables in the middle. And then you could have also trees, and you cut them into the biomass. Because the real biomass is not from grass. Grass is the first biomass. And it's a great biomass, because in 1 hectare, if you plant one grass called Mombasa from Brazil, it's one of the grasses, it gives you 90 tons of biomass. 90 tons in 4 months. So what does that mean? In 4 months, if you're going to buy 90 tons of biomass, it's a huge money. But if you produce the grass here, just cut and drop, it's a great asset. So that system we study in Brazil, there are many teachers doing it. The beauty of it, it can be done in large scale. You can even use mechanization, minimal mechanization with it, and it works. Now, let's go to India. We talked about the farm size in India. India farm size average is how many acres? Who can tell? And if you get it right, you get a present. This book was written by His Holiness Mukunda Maharaj. He was in the Bhaktivedanta Manor, and Prabhupada told him to develop cow protection. So he wrote the book, Do We Care? And whoever gets the right figure, what is the average size of an Indian farm, will get a present from us. Less than 5 acres, 5 acres. Other bids, come on, bid. 1 to 1.5. Give me more, give me more. Hold on, slowly, so I can keep track. 2.5 acres. Less than 1. 10. Maharaj, would you like 5? Sanat Kumar Prabhu. 1.5. Who gives more? Bhaktidira Damodar Maharaj. What's the average farm size in India? 2 acres. Yes? 3. Okay, remember your number. Now, the average farm size in India is 1.08 hectare, which comes out to 2.5 acres. That's the average according to the government figures. Doesn't mean you have a 100 acres farm, but on average, that's what you have. And why? Because, you know, tradition of tradition, you have so many brothers, the land is getting cut and cut and cut and cut until you have these little tiny plots. Is this bad or good? Why? It's manageable? Self-sufficient? I'll tell you 2 more reasons, but let's give the presents here. What's your name, Prabhu? Apo? Apurvanitai. Let's give a big round of applause for Apurvanitai, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Mukunda Maharaj. This is our booth. You can all get it. Maharaj wants it. So Maharaj gets a free gift too, right? So all the Maharajas. Do we have more? We have more? Okay. Maharaj. All the Maharajas have free gifts. There's one more Maharaj at the back. Okay, so why is it good to be small? That's the reason the tractor factory could not enter India easily. Let's say I have 2.5 acres. I'm going to buy a very expensive tractor for 2.5 acres? Doesn't make sense. So what did they do? They transformed the tractor into a truck. So all these trolleys, and when I need, I do some plowing. So that's the way the tractor industry managed to enter. And also the lands in India like up, down, so for the tractor to go. But the bulls can do that very nicely. So we still have some chance in India. Now when we see what he's doing, rice is being planted in India for thousands of years, right? So the fertility should be going down, right? Sanat Kumar Prabhu. You agree with my point? Is it going down? Why not? Right, so he gave something really nice. Howard discovers that also, that the rice has some symbiotic bacteria and fungi on the roots which regenerate the soil. So India is planting rice for thousands of years, but still the rice is there. Of course, because people are not putting as much manure and biomass as before, you'd have to put some NPK. I planted right here organically. We got better result than the chemical. It's nice to see miniket rice, and we told the farmers put some mustard cakes and some other, and the result was good. We got a good result. So it's possible, and for India, I think we should be looking at a system where it's replicable for farmers. So when you think of grazing for India, grazing needs 1 acre per cow. If you take the right grasses with the right pressure of grazing. So grazing may be possible here and there in the desert, but in general, it's not so easy. And you may say, but we had these huge grazing lands in India, it was kept by the village, why has it failed? Any idea? Why has it failed, the grazing lands of India? Cash crops, okay, that's one good point. And real estate encroachment, that's another point. Anybody else? Prabhu, your experience in India, what would you say? Why has the grazing lands failed? Oh, not failed, but failed to some degree. Okay, so he's bringing the point that the farmers are more focused on cash crops rather than having cows, which is a very good point. And also, if you think of that village I mentioned, the whole village was think as one unit. So each family has cows. When the old cows are there, the elderly people and the young people, they take them to the pasture grounds as one unit, not as my cow, your cow, his cow. So they're taking care of the pastures together. But when the individualistic culture comes to the village, the concept of the common thing drops. So that's how a lot of the grazing lands, cash crops, more cash crops than agriculture, loses its weight, so the grazing becomes less. There's still lands over there. The government wants to reestablish that, but we need to think of a system which is based on re-feeding the soil. Therefore, feed the soil is the topic. Let's go there. Okay, please click here in this picture. This is what we dream. We usually say, oh, grazing the cows like Krishna in Vrindavan, a very happy Vaishya, very serious guy, and nice shoes with all his cows at the back. But this system requires an enormous amount of land. For example, if you wanted to make grazing in Vrindavan today, you need $10 million, 50 crores, just to buy the land for this grazing system. And where can you buy 400 acres in one piece? It's very difficult. So for us in India, we need to think of a system where grazing can be integrated. Now there's a very smart British farmer, and he was a beef farmer. He said, doesn't work. Confirmed, doesn't work. Then he tried to be a dairy farmer, and his two daughters became vegans. And they said, we don't subscribe, we are leaving your property. So he became worried, and he transformed himself into an organic grain farmer. And he plants 195 different types of old wheat varieties in one field. And all those wheats together, diverse, generate one bread, one flour, which is milled on a windmill, and then goes to an artisan baker. And then the artisan baker tells him, look, your flour is too heavy, too light, and then he can adjust the mixture, and he produced that flour. Now, what he realized, I need to put energy in my soil. So he plants crops 3 years, he rests 3 years. Then the devotee said, hey, 3 years, we can put our cows there. So then, wherever the field is vacant, they put pasture for the cows, they go on pasturing, they fertilize his soil, then he comes back with grains. And then another area, he opens and he repeats the cycle. So he's got about 22 areas, and that's being changed here and there. So that could be an interesting system in India to get grazing. Different farmers alternate, and you fertilize the soil, and you get the crops. You can think about that. Let's go that. Okay. Let's go. Yes. And finally, education. So with education, our main goal would be to we have to think, not just repeat what everybody's doing. We must think. And tradition is a great praman of philosophy. What being done traditionally has its value. We should observe that. Reduce disturbing the soil. Reduce mechanization. Does that mean I don't use any mechanization? No, we reduce it gradually. We maximize the diversity of crops. We keep it covered as much as possible, right? And then we try to maintain the roots as much as possible in the system. Permanent agroforestry systems are very good for this. And include the cows in the system. So this is one of the frameworks that we are trying to implement in this thinking process of what could be a blueprint which is global, but then locally it's changed flavor according to climate, tradition, needs, and everything like that. We have 2 courses, Go Seva. Taking Care of Krishna's Cows, the foundational course, which is mostly ready. We have consulted with many devotees around the globe, including India, and it's almost ready. How to run a successful Goshala cow protection program in your area. And when you do that, you find that many times, if it's not enough land, your bills go very high. So how to reduce that? How to diversify? How to engage the congregation so that some congregation man has money and he wants to put in the stock market Bitcoin, say, hey, here's some land. After some time, that will be much more valuable. How about doing agroforestry in your land? In 20 years' time, you have retirement. You have your marriage of your daughter. Something like that could be thought about with the youth and congregation. Okay, so that course is coming up on a trial version. We're going to initially invite the Goshalas and people who are doing to give us feedback, and then we're going to launch it. That's on a... And the other one is a foundational course where we really want to say why this is important. And we already have lined up a few speakers. For example, we want His Holy Devamrita Swami to talk about uneconomical growth, happiness, and lifestyle engineering. How can you engineer your lifestyle in a way that bhakti becomes possible? And I know there are many of you here who are already doing that, bringing people closer to farm communities, living in farm communities, living from market gardens in Europe. We have here some people from Europe, so they're doing that. How can I do that? I'm doing that transition myself. My father has a farm for 47 years. I said, Dad, we need to develop a sustainable model here. So that's one. And then there's another topic, which is cows and civilization. Krishna Kshetra Swami, he wrote a book for Palgrave Macmillan called Cow Can Hindu Animal Ethics. And he brings from the Vedas the origins. Next, let's go down. And then there is Robert Hall, who's got 10,000 eco-villages in his network, and he's willing to teach us about intentional communities. How do you make intentional communities? How do you create social glue between members? What is it that makes people stick together? What are the values? So, okay, you're cow protection, but without a community, what can you do? You need a community, okay? And I also give you a brief blueprint. How do you put all this together? This is some of our teachers for this first philosophical part, but there are devotees all over the world who's going to teach specific parts, like animal drafts. In Hungary, there's one devotee called Antardi. He's expert. He's researched all the Czech machinery which were made for horses, adapted for bulls. And they work like machines. They cut the grasses, they cut the grazers, hay collectors, hay feeders, all made on bullock traction. Oil gunnies. India has many oil gunnies, so that could also be very nice included. We have biodynamic practices that we should include, teachers from that, and different schools like that. So from the philosophical to whole system designs, farming system designs, and community design, and then natural resources like water management, energy management, and these things. That's what's lined up. The ministry has that organized. We have already registered all the ISKCON projects which are farms. Only some urban Goshalas in India need to register, about 27 left. So we have the directory. It's available in our website. You can just go downstairs and you have that. A few minutes for interactions and questions. Can you tell us, or anybody wants to make a question or make a comment or a correction, you're very much welcome. Anybody? Okay, you can get everything from, we have it there, MCPA. Pen? We have pamphlets here which has all the information, but mcpa.iscon.org. Ministry of Cow Protection. Yes. Yes, and we have a link tree. Yes, we have here a card which has the site. Anybody wanting, we'll give it to you if you have wanted written. But it's if you want to write mcpa.iscon.org, and there's information. Now, a booth, you can get all the information of the process of the educational course, fundraiser. If you have a Goshala and you want it to be fundraised for you, to help you, we have that. Question? Your name?
I may not be a very qualified person to ask this question, but I'm asking to have the knowledge about it. I have not been into any farming directly myself in ISKCON. I was born in a Goshala and a farming community. But I have seen many of my team members talk about it, that whenever anyone tries to shift, any outside ISKCON devotee tries to shift from the chemical based farming to the organic farming, the traditional farming, they say that even after a trial of 2 to 3 years, 5 years also, they are actually finding it financially not viable to continue it, or let's say they are not actually getting more crops, like as you were saying. So how do I understand what's the reality, what's the ground reality?
First of all, you need to define what is your goal, what you want to get out of the farm. Money or sustainable lifestyle. Because some people feel like, I can maintain my city urban lifestyle with like cars and these things with the agriculture income. So you just define what you want first. Because if you feel like you want to live luxurious city life and should be supported by farm income, then that's not possible. But farm will definitely keep you for your comforts. It will definitely produce you what you need for your sustenance, minimum sustenance for simple life. And then it's a myth, like people say, like once you shift from chemical to organic, it takes 3 years or 5 years. Within less than 1 year also, techniques are available where land can get regenerated. It depends on how much capacity you have to put the inputs. But there are many farmers, like organic farmers are there, from which you can learn, and they are earning also very nicely. But at the same time, you can see their lifestyle is simple, and that's how their profit margins are high. So if we are talking about agriculture, then it comes to your lifestyle as well. So both has to match together. So the thing is, what I suggest is if you want to make any change, first, how many times in a year can you stay in village? At least stay in 3 different seasons are there. Please stay in the land at different seasons. Work with your hands first. And then just main thing is prioritize what you need in the life. Once you have that clarity in the mind, the land will definitely support. There are hundreds of examples that are there who are not devotees but staying very simple and a very satisfied life on the land.
I'd like just to add to your, it's a very beautiful question. We usually think, yes, this is nice, how do I do it? The how question comes up. And there are many examples. There's one devotee in Almvikgard, he's a devotee, he makes 15,000 euros per month. So, and it's fully organic, and he's one person. So it depends what's the goal. Now what I can tell you from my experience is, once you experience the natural way of life, it's so peaceful and conducive to bhakti. So once you understand that and you have the right system with you, then you start to make sense. You start to learn from nature. Okay? So, question here, question first.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. In India, specifically in West Bengal, Mayapur area, we have a huge problem with biomass burning, the grass stole. Did you research about how we can address it? I mean, we are trying to convert some in compost, but it's huge, like it's bigger than that we can do. Thank you.
She's talking about burning, the burning problem. It's a burning problem. The world doesn't know what to do with the waste, so it just burns. The farmers want to get rid of the grass, they burn. Farmers are not aware that that is the most rich source of fertilizers if they do it properly. Just to give you a picture, in Brazil, the native Indians, by burning the forest properly, the topsoil from 20 centimeters became as deep as this room. The black soil. It's called Terra Preta de Índio. But they have a very particular system to do. So understanding biomass is what the leaders need to understand. And we are a little far because we don't understand how to dispose of waste. So we just think the planet is a enormous sink which you can just dump unlimited amount of waste. And that's the big problem. We'll have to end now because I think if we had more time it would be very nice. But I'm very grateful to all of you. Please visit our booth. We have lots of information, and there's some flyers there that we can give you with all the websites. Hare Krishna. Gaura Premanandi. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.